Welcome to the Saturday Sex Show. So for those of you that are online, sexes, best life ever, welcome to the show. So we have a good show coming up here, and I'm just going to go over the program a bit here. I do have my mic on. For those of you that are on for the first time, that's probably my biggest problem here, is I always forget to turn my mic back on and off. I'm just getting used to my new OBS studio. So we have that control capability here. So yes, we are here today and alive. And for those of you that want to know today's date, it is June 10th, 2023. We are only 11 days from what? 11 days from the summer solstice. June 21st is the longest day of the year for us up here in the northern hemisphere. And for those south, it's the shortest day of the year. It's like their Christmas. Our Christmas up here is December. Their Christmas down in Australia is really June 21st. Shortest day of the year. So that's kind of how it all works. And for those of you around the world, we do have ones from Australia, from Japan. We welcome you all to the show, and thanks for tuning in. SDR, hello. Hopscraft, how are you doing? So Hopscraft is a Canadian, and he joins us on the show. Now, all across Canada, and I think in Hopscraft's location also in Quebec, is it Quebec? We have forest fires all across Canada. And this year is the El Nino, so it's going to be a hot year, 2023. That's what they're forecasting. And so, therefore, we have a lot of smoke. So if we have lung issues, it's hard to breathe. Even for the animals, it's hard at times. So it's today it's not bad. We don't have that much smoke today, so we have the sun out today, so it's nice. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us on the show. If you want to join the chat and you're just watching, or you just want to watch, it's all good, and we welcome everything. Now, I want to just slide through what we're going to be talking about today. Maybe the thumbnail got your attention. Now, I'm just going to get up here. And we had to bring our shovel on to the show because today is the dirtiest show ever, and we're going to have to shovel it out. So I brought a couple of shovels so you guys can join me. And this is a spade. Sometimes you need a spade, and the spade just chips away. It's sharp, if you look at the spade there. And this is an old spade we'd use for cement. And you chip away at things sometimes. That's what we need to do. Sometimes we need to just shovel it all out, just like shoveling the manure out. And that's what we're going to do today. There's actually an article that's entitled just that. And this article here is called, and this is from the Watchtower Help Club. Thank you to the Watchtower Help Club for all this information. In case you don't know, the Watchtower Help Club is a ex-Bethel, New York Bethel writing committee person. Wrote a 20-page letter, told Watchtower why it needs to be shoveled out, and they kicked him out, of course. So he started the Watchtower Help Club to help all of us understand what the Watchtower is really all about. And this individual really built quite a site. There's like thousands of pieces of information on this site, so really well done. Now, this article that we're going to cover today is, I'll just switch over to the display here. And sometimes my camera's not that good due to my lighting. our audio video department actually put a request into the financial department and said, hey, look, we need a separate camera and we need some real lights. We need about 5 lights. If you're still in the Watchtower, you remember this picture. Why Disfellowshipping is a loving provision. And it's from the Watchtower 2015 article. I'll just see if we can pull that up here. Yeah. So you notice there it's from the 2015 article there. So I'm just going to pull my display here down. Oops. Here. I'll just make myself a little smaller there. And then we can look at this together. So the article here that we're going to look at is from the Watchtower 2015, April 15, 29. And on their official website, the Watchtower explains their shunning policy as follows. And this is a quote straight from the Watchtower. Those who were baptized as Jehovah's Witnesses but no longer preach to others, perhaps even drifting away from association with fellow believers, are not shunned. In fact, we reach out to them and try to rekindle their spiritual interest. So what the Watchtower is saying is if you drift away, you're not supposed to be shunned. In fact, the Watchtower is supposed to actually send a couple of elders to see you or someone to see you periodically. Now, they go on to say in the Watchtower, we do not automatically disfellowship someone who commits a serious sin. If, however, a baptized witness makes a practice of breaking the Bible moral code and does not repent, he or she will be shunned or disfellowshipped. The Bible clearly states, remove the wicked man from among yourselves. And this is right out of the Watchtower, jw.org. Do you shun former members of your religion? So this is on their official website. Okay, so here back to the writer. Okay, we've fairly let them have their say and make their claim. They just claim that they don't shun someone unless they make a practice of breaking the Bible's moral code and are thus wicked. Now let's see if they have told the truth or have just lied through their false teeth. Okay, so now back to the Watchtower article of 1952, March 1st, page 131 and 134. It says, well, the reason for disfellowshipping is that some persons get into this congregation of God that do not love Christ. Such an individual has no place in the clean organization or congregation of God. He should go back to the wicked group that he once come from and die with that wicked group with Satan's organization. Can you believe that? That is the thinking of Knorr, 1952. And that's the thinking of the president of the Watchtower. This is how they think, and this is how they think today, the Watchtower. So back to the writer of this article, he says, who would determine whether someone sufficiently loved Christ? Good question. And how would they determine this? Another good question. And how does this possibly qualify as making a practice of breaking the Bible's moral code? Very good questions. That's what I would wonder. Like, who gives the Watchtower? Like, how can they determine if someone leaves the Watchtower? How can they determine that the person left Christ or left the Bible or broke the moral code just because they left the Watchtower? But yet, here, what they're saying is he should go back to the wicked group that he once came from and die with the wicked group with Satan's organization. So the Watchtower views everything outside of the Watchtower as Satan's wicked organization. And you see how verbal they were about it in 1952? They still feel the same. So let's carry on. So now we're going to go up to Watchtower 1972. And here's what it says. So let's see if they changed their thinking. Watchtower 1972, that's 52, 62, so that's 20 years later. It says, nevertheless, if future cases of gross unnatural conduct, such as the practice of oral or anal copulation, are brought to their attention, the elders should act to try to correct the situation before further harm results, as they would do with any other serious wrong. Their concern is, of course, to try to help those who go astray and are caught in the snare of the devil. But if persons willfully show disrespect for Jehovah God's marital arrangements, then it becomes necessary to remove them from the congregation as dangerous leaven that could contaminate others. And this is the Watchtower's thinking back in 1972, that any oral sex these individuals would have to be disfellowshipped. They would be viewed as a snare, caught in the snare of the devil. And that's what the Watchtower's thinking was in 1972, and therefore, after that article, there was a lot of disfellowshippings. If you could imagine, if people were brave enough to talk about their sexual activity. Now, back to the article, the writer of this article, he says, so we find out that certain sexual practices done in private between a husband and a wife are the snare of the devil and justify shunning of the wicked couple? I imagine the only way that others in the congregation would know about a couple's foray into oral sex would be by the large smiles on the couple's faces, the dangerous leaven that would soon have every couple wanting to try it. So obviously the writer has a good sense of humor. So yeah, if you could imagine, you're going to get disfellowshipped over how you conduct your marital sex in your bedroom. And that's why the Watchtower is so dirty, getting into people's bedrooms. And that's back in 1972. So now we go back to the article. Funny how the Bible's moral code never once condemns or even mentions such practices, as the Watchtower had admitted in print. So yeah, the Bible doesn't even mention oral sex. It doesn't even get into any of that kind of stuff. So let's carry on. The Watchtower, 1978. So now here's 5 years later, 1972 to 1978. Let's see if the Watchtower changes their mind on this subject. Here's what it says. It must be acknowledged that the Bible does not give any specific rules or limitations as regard the manner in which husband and wife engage in sexual relations. So you see, probably questions from the readers came in, and the Watchtower was challenged and say, where do you get this monitoring what we do in our bedroom? Where do you get this from the Bible? Prove it to us, show it to us. So then the Watchtower couldn't prove it, so 5 years later they ran this article and they said, yeah, it's really, the Bible doesn't really talk about it, so, that's what they said. So it's not a big deal. So here's what the writer of this article says. He says, so can we stop shunning such couples now? So imagine this. 5 years earlier, you were disfellowshipped for oral sex. And you're married. So you're a married couple, and maybe you're serving on the body or something, I don't know. But you're disfellowshipped for oral sex. And 5 years goes by, and 1978 comes by, and they run this article. They change their mind and say, yeah, we have no right to really determine what's going on in your bedroom. So are the couple now announced, so-and-so is no longer shunned because we have a change of mind? You see, that's not what happens. They're still shunned. They're still shunned. So here it is. So can we stop shunning such couples now? No. Though they weren't guilty of breaking the Bible's moral code, they were guilty of something just as bad, breaking the Watchtower's own made-up commandments, which, of course, was truth for its time. Did I hear someone shout out, Pharisee? Yeah, these are Pharisees. These are the same as the scribes and Pharisees of Jesus' day. So here it goes on to say, what if I'm a Jehovah's Witness in good standing, whose daughter and son-in-law have been disfellowshipped for having engaged in oral sex. So what if I'm a Jehovah's Witness in good standing and whose daughter and son-in-law have been disfellowshipped for having engaged in oral sex? Do I have to continue to shun my own daughter even though she has broken no biblical moral code and loves Christ? Well, here's what the Watchtower says in 1955. It says, if after sufficient warning that the publisher persists in associating with the disfellowshipped person, instead of aligning himself with Jehovah's organization, he also should be disfellowshipped. You see, so that ruling still stands. You see, so they haven't changed their supreme ruling of 1955. If you associate with someone that's disfellowshipped, you yourself will be disfellowshipped. So here it is. Someone was disfellowshipped on the false grounds in 1972 of oral sex. In 1978, the Watchtower changes its mind on it and says, yeah, it's okay now. And you go and associate with that person, you get disfellowshipped. Why? Well, let's carry on in the article. There you have it. Associating with someone who has been disfellowshipped can get you disfellowshipped as well, though it's hardly what a rational person would call breaking the Bible's moral code. In my Bible, it says that Jesus associated with the sinners because he felt they needed him. Also, they tend to be a lot more fun to hang out with. He didn't mind the prostitutes. He hung out with them. The prostitute came in and washed his feet with oil, really expensive oil. And then when he was reprimanded by the owner of the house, Jesus put him in his place, and he says, I walked in here and you guys didn't do anything for my feet. My feet are all dry and cracked, but this woman came and used this expensive oil and washed my feet. So, Jesus, he hung out with anybody. And the Watchtower, when they go on and on about this Bible's moral code, what they're really talking about is being submissive, or your submission to the Watchtower, your submission to the governing body, the men, the Supreme Council. So that's really what this is all about. I think he gets into it. I don't want to say what he says here. So let's look at the well-known circumstances of one very public disfellowshipping, Ray Franz. He was a member of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, and he lived a moral life and studied the Bible daily. He never broke the Bible's moral code. No one in their right mind would have considered him wicked. When he learned that some of the teachings that he had been promulgating as a member of the governing body were untrue, he had the crisis of conscience, which led him to resign his position. At one point, he shared a meal with someone who had been disfellowshipped. And for this, Ray himself was disfellowshipped and consequently shunned by all Jehovah's Witnesses. Isn't that sad? So for any of you people out there that perhaps knew Ray Franz, or you come from that time era, from what I understand, he was a terrific guy. So what a story. It goes on to say, was Ray making a practice of breaking the Bible's moral code? Was he a wicked man? Answer that question honestly, and you'll see that the official site of Jehovah's Witnesses currently has a big, fat, stinking lie smelling up the place. Yes, Jehovah's Witnesses are disfellowshipped, i.e. shunned, for thinking or forming their own opinions, or living their lives at variance with the current understanding of the Watchtower. Sometimes witnesses get ahead of the light, rejecting a current teaching for one that the governing body later adopts. They are disfellowshipped for this, and that sentence is not commuted even after it turns out that they were right. For instance, oral and anal sex between married couples was later declared not to be against the Bible's moral code, and hence no longer a disfellowshipping offense. So now we're going to go to the Watchtower of 1978 and read pages 30 to 31. So here it is, from the Watchtower. In the past, some comments have appeared in this magazine in connection with certain unusual sex practices, such as oral sex within the marriage, and these were equated with gross sexual immorality. On this basis, the conclusion was reached that those engaging in such sex practices were subject to disfellowshipping if unrepentant. The view was taken that it was within the authority of congregational elders to investigate and act in a judicial capacity regarding such practices in the conjugal relationship. A careful further weighing of this matter, however, convinces us that, in view of the absence of clear scriptural instruction, these are matters for which the married couple themselves must bear the responsibility before God, and that these marital intimacies do not come within the province of congregational elders to attempt to control nor to take disfellowshipping action with such matters as the sole basis. So a complete flip-flop the governing body made on sex, on oral and anal sex. So what does the writer say? He goes on to say, any witness who was disfellowshipped for this was not automatically reinstated when the governing body realized that the individual was not breaking God's law. No, the individual had to come crawling back on their knees, begging to be reinstated. But why would anyone do that? Wouldn't it have become painfully obvious as a result of that experience that the governing body does not know what God's laws are? Very good question. It's obvious. If the governing body would change their mind like that and they're not humble enough to go back and apologize to any of the people and say you are now, or even put in the magazines, you're now reinstated. Any of those who have been disfellowshipped unrighteously due to our fault are now reinstated, and here's our apologies. You see, the governing body does not work that way. They're narcissists and they're prideful. So Satan doesn't work that way. So the governing body works for Satan. So we know that they don't work that way. They're working as an angel of light for Satan. That's what they're trying to look like, an angel of light. So here it says, goes on to say, this example makes it clear that the witnesses are in reality shunned, not for breaking their God's law, but for breaking the Watchtower's rules. You see, so it's quite clear that shunning is not about God's laws, it's about the Watchtower's rules. And this is what we want to identify here. And if we're taking legal action against the Watchtower, it's quite easy to show that the Watchtower shuns and discriminates and slanders, not based on biblical commands at all. So let's carry on. Witnesses are not to speak or write to disfellowship witnesses. If the disfellowshipped one is an apostate, holding views at variance with the governing body, as was the case with Ray Franz, then not only are they never to acknowledge that person's existence, they are ordered to hate, loathe, and despise the individual. Can you believe that? Well, let's look at the Watchtower. Let's see what the Watchtower says. So here we are, Watchtower, July 15th, 1992. So now we're getting newer. So this is a newer thinking. It says the obligation to hate lawlessness also applies to all activity by apostates. Our attitude toward apostates should be that of David, who declared, "Do I not hate those who are intensely hating you, O Jehovah? And do I not feel a loathing for those revolting against you? With a complete hatred, I do hate them. They have become to me real enemies." So when we talk about hate, and it's a very strong word, I don't even like to use the word, but hate is the opposite of love. And I thought that the Christian faith was about love. I thought Jesus was all about love. I thought religions were supposed to be about love. But this religion is about hate when it comes to shunning. And it's in their writings. It's in the Watchtower, July 15, 1992. I'll put a link to this article in the description here after I'm done the show. And so if you're outside of the Watchtower and you're looking for evidence, if you're in the legal departments and you want evidence that the Watchtower actually puts hate stuff in their journals, and this is a fairly new one, and you see Jehovah's Witnesses view the Watchtower as a higher authority than the Bible. Sadly, but true in most cases. The Watchtower supersedes the Bible to them, because to them, the governing body is God's chosen ones, and the governing body knows how to understand the Bible. The Bible's too hard to understand for the common person, so we need the Watchtower. So the Watchtower bond volumes are very large, they get very big, and they go all the way back, and it's like court, it's almost like legal proceedings, and they go to the last proceeding when they change their mind on things. It's like it goes to Supreme Court and then they write a new Watchtower on it and it goes in. And that's how they rule their flock. So very, very much fits the bite model for cults. And again, in the description of this video, we have a petition here running in Canada where we're trying to stop funding cults that fit the bite model, that shun, especially shunning, and that's what we're covering in this article, and they shun children. So the shunning is such a harmful practice, and now we've established beyond any shadow of a doubt in this article, among many others, that shunning is based on the Watchtower. It's not based on the Bible's moral code. So, and it's hate. It's really part of a hate crime, in my opinion. How they talk about hate in their magazines right here. The obligation laws, this is hating. And they talk about this right here with a complete hatred. I hate them. They are real enemies. So, and when you hear the governing body talk about apostates, that's how they talk. They're very, very hateful in how they talk about us. And they don't even know us. So, anyways, they go on in the Watchtower of October 1st, 1952, and they say, we must hate in the truest sense, which is to regard with extreme and active aversion, to consider as loathsome, odious, filthy, to detest. And this is how they view the apostates. So back to the article here. The writer says, this is especially ironic since the Watchtower claims that the basis of disfellowshipping is love. And that's right from their magazine, 1952. They talk about it there. And it is even more ironic when a son or daughter is involved in apostasy, i.e. thinking for themselves. And parents who have been instructed to give unconditional love must now hate, loathe, and detest their own children. And this is what's happening within the Watchtower. Now, the writer goes on to talk about this, and he says, if a son or daughter is disfellowshipped, then the parents must limit their association with their children to just what is absolutely necessary. Recent articles have warned witnesses against trying to stretch the definition of necessary contact. And you can find hundreds of stories on the internet of people whose lives have been ruined due to this heartless policy of the Watchtowers. This is in spite of the fact that the secret handbook that only elders are allowed to see, and that's shepherding the flock of God. And it looks like there's a link to it here. It probably is. There's all kinds of links to those if you want to see them now. Now, it goes on to say, now states the witness who has undue association with disfellowshipped relatives should be counseled and lose privileges, but should not be hauled before a judicial committee to be disfellowshipped as long as it's not a spiritual association and the disfellowshipping decision isn't criticized. Wow. So here they are disfellowshipping within families just because your relative is disfellowshipped. So if you're within a family and you have too much association within your family with someone that's disfellowshipped, you could lose all your privileges. Goes on to say, but most witnesses are unaware of what's in that secret handbook, And they hear at the conventions is show love to your disfellowship family members by cutting off all contact with them. That's what they hear. And it goes on to say, shunning between family members is one of the most glaringly apparent signs of a cult. What else but a mind-controlling cult could ever come between the sacred bond between parents and their children? Isn't that the truth? So what else? I'm gonna reread that. Shunning between family members is one of the most glaringly apparent signs of a cult. And what else but a mind-controlling cult could ever come between the sacred bond between parents and their children? So, folks, again, that's why these cults that claim to be religions, and they're getting all kinds of charities in Canada here. We're pumping out $1 billion plus to these religions that are classified as charities, and the Jehovah's Witnesses have their hands out for as much charity as they can get. In fact, during COVID, it was brought to my attention that all the Bethel workers got something like $26,000 during COVID. And so, how does the Watchtower account for that? They have their hands out. Whenever there's a handout, and they said, yeah, we need it for all our employees. So now in Bethel, they call them all employees. So they called them all employees so they could get the $26,000 per Bethel worker. And the Bethel worker didn't see any of that. So the Bethel workers in there working, they're doing the same job that they've ever done in Bethel. Nothing's really changed, but the Bethel got $26,000 per worker. So you do the math, all over the world, that's a large sum of money. But in the U.S., they got that. In Canada, they would have got that because Trudeau in Canada was handing out money to all kinds of people. So anyways, if you think that the Watchtower doesn't have its hands out, both hands out, collecting charities, it's wrong. And that's why Norway, they said, we've had enough. We've had enough treating these types of religion that break families up and treating them like charities. I believe that they're ahead of us, some of these countries. They're ahead in their thinking because they're putting families first. And when we look at our human rights, it's number 4th on our human rights is to have freedom of religion. So if we're in the Watchtower and we have freedom of religion and freedom of thinking with religion, and we shouldn't be shunned for that, it's against human rights. We're getting shunned for freedom of religion, freedom of thinking, because we want to go outside of the Watchtower. We're getting shunned for that, discriminated, slandered. And this is why this shunning is against human rights. And this has to go, again, to all the Supreme Courts. And it has to be handled differently. So carrying forth, we got caught off. We got on a sidetrack here. But shunning between family members, it's one of the worst things. So when you're in a cult that explicitly separates you from associating with outsiders, suicide in a not uncommon response to being shunned by the cult. Suicide is a not uncommon response. So this probably accounts for a large part of the high suicide rate among Jehovah's Witness former members. And there's a link there where you can go off. All of his articles have links, so you can go off and go on a reading campaign if you want to know more. And he'll give instances. He doesn't. This writer doesn't just talk about things on a whim. He has links and he shows where things have happened. So now he goes on to say the Watchtower claims that if a witness acts up, it would bring reproach on Jehovah's name if they didn't disfellowship that person. So what they're really worried about is what the neighbors will say about them. But that argument just insults our intelligence. I've known Catholics who get drunk and Methodists who cheat on their taxes, but I'm smart enough not to take the actions of these individuals and hold them against the Catholics or the Methodist Church. You're always going to have a few bad apples, but it would be a stupid farmer who would condemn the tree because of it. It would be. You know, you're going to have years where you have bad apples on a tree, you know, just the year, or some get picked by the birds and they fall off. But yeah, it's their reasoning, because it's going to bring reproach on Jehovah, we have to disfellowship you, is that reasoning doesn't cut it, and it's BS. So here the writer says, shame on the governing body, and it's Watchtower for this shunning policy. Shame on the Watchtower. Shame on the parents who meekly go along with this command to shun their own children. It's time to wake up. It's time to awake and smell the SH*T the Watchtower is shoveling. It's time to wake up and grab that shovel and shovel this stuff out the door. And then go hug your kids. That's what it's time to do. So, P.S. Shunning also extends to written communication. If you're a witness, you are now in big trouble for even having read this article written by an apostate. But your secret is safe with me. The elders will never know. Just don't even think of leaving a comment. The Watchtower has specifically commanded that you shall not leave comments on apostate sites, as that would be communicating with an apostate. But go ahead, give it a shot. Just leave a little, and we won't tell. So I like this guy's sense of humor. So now we're going to go back to the live stream here, and I'm going to see what you guys are up to. Who's on? Okay, wow, we've got a lot of people on. Hobbscraft, K54B, Blue Rose, hi. Jane Spitfire, thanks for joining us, Jane. Hobbscraft, yeah. Tall Cool Woman. And thank you for being on, Tall Cool Woman. I want to say, Tall Cool Woman, I don't know you, I don't know anything. And that's the beauty of all of this internet stuff, is we really don't know a lot about people. But we learn about people through the comments, and we watch people, and we get to watch different people. And Tall Cool Woman, I think she's just one of the most terrific people on that join all of these sites, and she's out there encouraging everyone and making sure that if anyone needs help, she's right there for you. So if you want to get to know Tall Cool Woman, she's an ex-Jehovah's Witness that has a lot of experience, and she's actually kind of PMO or kind of in, or she has a mate that's in. And I hope I don't give out too much, but I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate seeing Tammy there again, and Jane. You guys are all really close. You guys all talk. That's great. And these are great communities to get to know one another. And Sherry's on tonight. Nice to see you again, Sherry D. We haven't seen you for a bit, and I seen your comment the other day, and I read through it, and you have that Spitfire in you, and keep up the good work. Mimi, hello. Thanks for joining us today, Mimi. And who else do we have? I'm going to go down here. You guys had some good discussions there. That's really great. So it's great to see. So Eric Erpelding. Before government officials, the Watchtower says it is the only spiritual matters that the family members cannot be discussed. Otherwise, they can talk with them. So yeah, the governing body officials, right? They want to rule people's lives, ruin people's lives. Okay, so we're going to carry on with our program. So thanks for being online, you guys. This brings an end to the Watchtower Help Club Disfellowshipping Shunning Watchtower style. So what we've shown there, what this writer has shown us, is the Watchtower is disfellowshipping not based on the Bible's moral code. And he showed a lot of different examples. So that's a lie. They lie through the teeth. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, and then we'll get to the dirtiest article ever, bring your own shovel. But just as an intermission here, we're gonna do this little video here. And I'm going to go to my display. And think if I do that. And I don't know, you may have seen this one on another video. So I'm going to shut my mic off. I got to turn the desktop audio on, right? Okay, and I'm going to turn my mic off. So here it is.
This time we this time we identified we had neglected our time was short, you took these ten, no stars, no children, time famines by now, you have some great grandkids. The generation could not lie, but when they died, we did not lie. Imagine with extension beyond human comprehension. We were all but touched the past. Today we know all the truth we lost. All the penance come into perhaps before we entered you. It's the last days of the last days of the last days of the last days. And this time we this time we really try.
Okay, I turned my mic back on. So there I am. And I'm going to shut the desktop audio back off. There we go. So the mic is on. Yes. Okay. I'm going to go back to the studio mode. So that was that's pretty good. That thanks to Watchtower Help Club. I'm just going to go back and make sure we give Watchtower Help Club the right credit. This is, in case you guys don't know, this is the Watchtower Help Club that built this video. And that's links to their YouTube site. and you can write them a little letter, Watchtower Help Club. I did, and subscribe to their YouTube site so we can help them grow their YouTube site, and that's what we can recommend to a lot of these good providers. And a lot of these people are working behind the scenes. This is what amazes me. What I've been learning in the last year is there's so many sites like avoidjw.org. There's a really good site. And again, there's so many people behind the scenes working on keeping these sites up to date. A new site that is full of information is BeFree2023.com. It's nice to go to that. I'll pull it up. If you haven't seen it, we're going to be talking about this pretty well on all of our shows and lives. Well, I'll just type it in here. I Be Free. There, it comes right up. So I'll pull it up here, and then we can take a look at that together a little bit here on the display. So there it is, Be Free 2023. Go to that site. It's on Halloween Day this year. That was Halloween Day significant to Russell died on October 31st, so there's a bit of significance there. So we're going before the White House, and we're supporting all of our U.S. ex-Jehovah's Witness brothers and sisters that are going out to do this work, and it's going to be a great event. So we want to make sure we get out there and give them that support. Now I'm just going to go off mic here to clear my throat. There, I'm back online. I think actually it's I think it's all the smoke. I think that's what we're dealing with. Okay, so we're going to carry on here. My mic is back on, and we are going to look at the last article here, the one that you guys have all been waiting for. And if you have your shovels, you notice I have mine back here. This is when we want to get our shovels out, and this is the dirtiest article ever. So the title in this article says, "Bring your own shovel." So I brought 2 shovels in case someone forgot theirs. Just let me know, and we'll start going through this article. Okay, I'll put it on the screen here, screen and capture, so you guys can see what it says here. The dirtiest article ever. Our text for today is from Deuteronomy 23:13-14. We could look at that. Maybe we should look at that. Let's look at that. 13-14. It says, a pig should be part of your equipment, and when you squat outside, you should dig a hole with it and then cover your excrement. For Jehovah your God is walking about within your camp to deliver you and to hand over your enemies to you. And your camp must be holy, so that he does not see anything indecent in you and turn away from accompanying you. So here it's talking about burying our poop. That's really what that's talking about. Okay, back to the article. It says a pig, a shovel, should be part of your equipment. When you squat outside, you should dig a hole with it and then cover your excrement. For Jehovah your... We just read all that. Okay, so can you picture the oops face of poor Gomer, who did his duty but forgot his shovel at home, as Jehovah strides off into the distance, exclaiming, "Hey, I almost stepped in that. I'm out of here." And then how all that other Israelite soldiers yell at Gomer as, now unprotected by their war god, Jehovah of armies, their enemies swoop down on them with vengeance, and they lose the battle Jehovah had promised to win for them, over him not burying his poop. I think Jehovah is right. No one wants to step in poop. I, for one, I am so glad that the Almighty included this very important rule in his perfect and holy law. Because even though my cat knows enough to do this, some people just need to be told everything. But worse than stepping in it is to be full of it, which brings me to quite naturally to the Watchtower. So now we're getting to the Watchtower. The Watchtower's poop. The Watchtower has dug up other equally irrelevant and stinky old laws from the Hebrew Scriptures and enforced them on their dupes, the Jehovah's Witnesses, despite their own theology, which holds that Christians are no longer under the law covenant, Galatians 3:24 and Hebrews 8:8. But they've been selective. Very few witness book bags that I've seen have a shovel strapped to them for the use in case someone has to take a dump while engaged in the field ministry. Yet, strictly following the above law, they all should. But let's return to that ever-persistent call to nature. I knew a witness who would always correct any worldly person who used the phrase Mother Nature. And she would say, not Mother Nature, God. So I guess instead of using the phrase, the call of nature, we should refer to it as the call of God. Or better yet, as the call of, as a good witness always is seeking to honor God's name and never miss an opportunity for let it be known. So we shall say the call of Jehovah. So when we have to use the outhouse, we don't say the call of nature. That's wrong in a witness's eyes. So we say the call of Jehovah. He has a sense of humor. It's good. Comedian Steve Allen once wrote about that other minor call of Jehovah. And he said that pissing against a wall had to have been one of the worst offenses to the Old Testament God, because we read over and over again of how he wants the Israelites to kill everyone engaged in that activity. And see, for example, 1 Samuel 25 and 22. Should we look at it? Okay, let's look at it. I'm curious. So it says there, so and more also God unto the enemies of David, if I leave of all that pertain to him by morning light, any that pisseth against the wall. It does say that. I can't believe that. I didn't know it said that. So, yeah, you don't want to piss against the wall. Okay, thank you. It does say that. So, back to the article. It says, I saw a homeless man doing exactly that the other day. He was just lucky. The old law had passed away. Other words, if a passing Jehovah's Witness had seen him pissing on the wall, he would no doubt have been beaten to death with a poop shovel. Because that's what the law says. But here's another old passed away law that those faithful and discreet boys have seen fit to enforce now and again. According to the Bible at Deuteronomy 22, 23 to 27, an Israelite engaged girl threatened with rape was required to scream. And what if the position of a Christian woman today, if faced with a similar situation? Is she to scream even if an attacker threatens her life with a weapon? According to God's law, an Israelite girl was under obligation to scream. In case there happened to be a virgin girl engaged to a man, and a man actually found her in the city and lay down with her, you must also bring them both out of the gate of that city and pelt them with stones, and they must die. The girl for the reason that she did not scream in the city, and the man for the reason that he humiliated the wife of his fellow man. If, however, the attack took place in a field, and the woman screamed and thus tried to get away from the attacker, she was not to be stoned, since she was overpowered and there was no one to rescue her. So that's just straight from Deuteronomy 22, 23 to 27. Now, this is from the Watchtower of 1964, explaining this. It says here in the Watchtower, such scriptural precedents are applicable to Christians who are under command, flee from fornication, according to 1 Corinthians. Thus, if a Christian woman does not cry out and does not put forth every effort to flee, she would be viewed as consenting to the violation. The Christian woman who wants to keep clean and obey God's commandments then, if faced with the situation today, needs to be courageous and act on the suggestion made by the scriptures and scream. Actually, this counsel is for her welfare. For if she should submit to the man's passionate wishes, she would not only be consenting to fornication or adultery, but be plagued by the shame. There would be shame not only from the repulsiveness of the experience, but of having been coerced into breaking God's law by having sex connections with one other than a legal marriage mate. So that's right from the Watchtower. That's how the Watchtower talks to people, folks. For those of you out there that are not used to this kind of this bite model of manipulation and how they control people and how they explain scriptures. So they cherry pick this old scripture in Deuteronomy, this old law, and now they're applying it to present day situations. So if you don't scream, if you're a sister and you don't scream, well, you're guilty. You're guilty because you wanted. That's why you didn't scream. You know, what if the person couldn't scream? You know, let's see what this writer says here. I'm sure he talks about it. He goes on to say, I think what the Watchtower has tried to come up with is the notion that you can derive principles about what God does and doesn't like based on his perfect law in the Hebrew Scriptures. So they pick and choose what seems appropriate from this ancient barbaric law and try to apply it to life in the modern world. But what this ends up making them the arbitrators of the law. This ends up making them the arbitrators of the law, the arbiters of the law. That's a heavy, not to mention presumptuous responsibility. They'd better be extra discreet and sure about what they're claiming is God's law before uttering any pronouncement or enforcing any punishment, don't you think? Evidently not, though, because they've changed their minds about the blameworthiness of silent rape victims several times. And see, for instance, the Awake of 1993 and March for the myths, realities of rape. So they talk about it there. Blaming the victims of rape reminds me of how the Watchtower religion treats other innocent victims. So blaming the victims of rape. So if you were raped, if you're a woman and you're raped and you didn't scream because you couldn't scream or you just couldn't scream, they blame you for it. That's what the writer's saying, and that's true. It's right in their articles. So now blaming the victim of rape reminds me of how the Watchtower's religion treats other innocent victims. Some Jehovah's Witness women have been counseled not to file a complaint against their abusive husbands because they would be guilty of bringing shame on Jehovah's name as well as failing to be submissive to their brutes or to their husbands. But this attitude should surprise no one who is familiar with the children who are given the same treatment, when they're basically told to forgive and forget their abuse at the hands of the pedophile elders lurking in their congregations. These are all instances of passing the blame onto the victim and then laying a guilt trip on them now. Now admit it, isn't that the dirtiest trick you've ever heard of? So that's it. The dirtiest trick is this, is passing the blame onto the victims and then laying a guilt trip on them. The dirtiest trick. So the Watchtower has really put themselves into a pickle. They've all over the world now. They're you plug in Jehovah's Witnesses and up come do you want a lawyer? You know, seriously, quite seriously. I'm just gonna change my screen here. Sorry. Yeah, if you plug into the internet Jehovah's Witnesses, all kinds of bad things come up in the internet. It's they have really dirtied Jehovah's name. The word Jehovah is a dirty word on the internet, and it's dirty because of the Watchtower. The Watchtower has muddied it and dirtied it. So now I think we're almost to the end of our program here, and it's 3:30. So we've been online. I'm gonna just take a look at who's online here, and say hi to everyone. So and thanks Mimi and Eric for being there. Yeah, Jehovah was originally was a storm god. That's an interesting subject, Eric, that you're bringing up, and. We've been doing some research, my good wife and I, and it's interesting because you know the old saying, "What if it's written in stone? Would you believe it if it's written?" Well, it's written in stone. The only thing that we can think of for that's written in stone is the Ten Commandments, and they were broken. The stones are broken, and we can't find the stones today. But there's actually written in stones before the Bible and well before anything that the Hebrews existed. And we were researching the Sumerian, some of these tablets and these stones that exist long before the Hebrews. And the stories of Gilgamesh are almost exactly the same as Noah. And it's like the Bible was taken from these ancient Sumerian cities, and that there is actually they're different gods in the Sumerians. And then we started watching the Anunnaki, and it's a race of people that came to the earth. They were our gods, and they created man. And I read a book by Stitchin. Stitchin's the guy's last name. There were 7 books, and he wrote these books about the Anunnaki. And this is all written in stone. You can go and find this online. You can probably go to different museums and find these stones if you can read them. But can we trust what's written in stone? You see, what's written on papyrus or paper, it's a lot later. This stone stuff goes way back, way before the Bible. So it's quite interesting. I think as we get out of religion, it doesn't hurt to get right outside and take a look at everything that's out there and see what's happening all over the place. Hello, Gilbert, GG4GB. Is J dirty because it has always had been? Is J, yeah, Jehovah? Yeah, I'm wondering, eh? But I'm hoping everyone enjoyed the show today. It's some of these subjects are deeper. YouTube's not big fans of these subjects because we use the SEX word a little bit, and then advertisers don't like it, so we don't monetize these things basically. But we have a lot of fun with them, and it's important, I think, that we dig deep into some of this stuff, pull out our shovels, and shovel this stuff out of our lives. Because if we're blunt with ourselves, realizing that we were in a cult, we perhaps have narcissistic tendencies. I've had to look at myself like that, and I've had to say to my wife, tell me if I have, anytime I'm having these narcissistic tendencies. And then, sometimes we sit down and it comes from the Watchtower. It always comes to the Watchtower. But that's what they've taught us. They taught us that we had the truth. And any time that we think that we have the truth, that's when we have to be careful. That's what I think. But anyways, that brings an end to our show. So I thank you guys all for joining us today. And keep smiling. I see a lot of smiles out there in the group today. So keep smiling. I think that's what gets us through these smoky days. Anyways, and it helps us to look forward to the next day. So until next time, keep living your life with love. And I'm going to give you my outro today. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to shut off my mic. And here we go. Well, it looks like my ride's here, so join me. I ride home.